I was 15 years old, and back in those days you'd usually catch my friends and I at the big AMC movie theater. It's a huge theater, kind of reminds me of an airport almost. And it was a very popular hangout for kids that age on weekends. I remember going to the movies one night with friends and a group of guys approached us, started chatting, flirting as you do at that age. They said they went to one of the local high schools. One of the guys I was talking to eventually asked for my phone number. I gave it to him. I was naive, thought it was harmless, so I gave him my phone number. He called me maybe a day or two after that, so we talked for a bit. We had a few more phone conversations here and there before you asked me out on a date as we made plans to meet. He told me that he needed to tell me something, admitted that he actually wasn't 16 or whatever age he had said he was. It wasn't in high school, 22. I felt silent, trying to think of my response, but there was more. Not only was he 22, he'd been in prison and was recently released. Why accessory to murder for being in the car when his friend shot someone while driving by. Still remember being frozen in fear. I calmly said that I didn't want to talk to him anymore and please never call me again, and hung up. After I hung up, the phone immediately started ringing again. I picked it up, but before I could even say hello, this man had called back and was already screaming at the top of his lungs into the phone. I can't remember exactly what he was saying, but it was along the lines of, "Don't you ever hang up on me," calling me every name in the book, so I hung up again this time, leaving the phone off of the receiver. I remember being so scared to tell my parents, because I didn't want them to be disappointed in me. They were always so proud of me for making good decisions. It was my fault, after all, giving some guy I just met my phone number, so I didn't say anything at first. The calls, however, kept coming. But to keep my parents in the dark, I usually made sure I was only answering the phone when it rang. He told me that he put my home phone number into a reverse phone directory and had found my address. He would call and say things like, "I like your sister's new green car," to make sure I knew he was watching the house around. This time I developed a fear of being home alone. I couldn't be home for even a minute. So if my parents and sister were gone, I'd call a neighbor friend to come spend some time with me one night. My parents were in bed, but my sister and I were up late watching TV, saw a car pull into our driveway, just sit there with lights on. I couldn't see who it was, but I knew who it was. After that, everything stopped. Remember thinking how crazy it was that he'd done all of that and then just disappeared. Maybe 2 years later, I was sitting at home watching the finale of American Idol, and the phone rang. The caller ID said it was coming from a correctional facility. Confused, I answered it. It was a collect call from you-know-who. I couldn't believe it. I obviously didn't accept it, and hung up. And thankfully, I never heard from him again. I told my parents about this years later, and they said, "No wonder you were scared to be alone." I should have told them at the time because it could have escalated even further. A story mirrors a similar experience I had years ago, the one I posted here. I really do wonder if there's something about me that attracts these people. One lapse in judgment can lead to situations like these, but all the creepy men I've encountered in my life, it's not meat, again. For reference, I work as a barista in a coffee shop inside a larger store. I am one of a handful of male baristas at my shop. I'm gay and very open about this. I wear pride shoes. I have a pride flag attached to my name tag. I have a couple of wristbands with rainbows and phrases like Orlando Strong, as well as a local LGBT+ center. So the other day I was working my shift at a register. A gentleman comes up to me and smiles. "I think you noticed the pride flag on my name tag." But he didn't explicitly mention it. At first he says he doesn't know what to order and asks for my opinion. Now, I'm not a coffee drinker, but I know a drink fits most tastes. So I ask him what he likes, and then I try to give him recommendations as I'm talking. I can tell he's paying more attention to me than what I'm actually saying, which I'm completely okay with. He was a shorter, well-built man, had beautiful eyes, a nice beard, basically. The perfect DILF. Eventually he decides on a super sweet ice drink that we have, and I go to make it for him. As I'm making the drink, one of my co-workers leans over and whispers, "I think that customer just took a picture of you. That was a bit of a red flag," but I thanked her and kind of brushed it off. I gave him his drink and he smiles. Then he points to the pride flag and says, "I love that flag. Where can I get one of those?" I laughed and said I got it from a pride event that I went to a few years ago. He then said, And where can I get the person it's attached to? I immediately feel a rush, and I start blushing, but trying to act professional. I brush it off. He eventually takes his drink and sits at one of the tables. I continue going about my day debating whether I should give in to this guy or not. Every now and then I've glanced at his table to see him looking at me. No matter when I looked, seemed that he was looking at me. I started to get that weird feeling, the hard eyes with red flags type of thing. Then I noticed that he hasn't taken a single drink out of his coffee. When I go have a break, I wipe down some of the tables. I stopped by his table and asked if he didn't like it, and if not, I can make him a new one free of charge. He hands me the drink and mentions he's not sure if it's too sweet for him or not, then asked me to try it. I politely declined, telling him I don't drink coffee. He's shocked, asked me why I'm working here and blah blah blah. As we're talking though, his questions begin to shift. So, do you lift at all? Me? No, not really. Well, how much do you think you could lift if you had to have a job requirement is 50 pounds, so I guess at least that much. Well, I've learned it's good to be able to lift at least half your body weight. How much do you think you weigh? Immediate red flags are going off. There's something about the combination of the drain. Can those two questions that made me feel like I was being asked how much of a fight I'd be able to put up, especially if drugged. I have been drugged at a party before, and these things are red flags that I've learned to pick up on, so I kindly and quickly end the conversation and go back to cleaning tables. As the hours go by, it continues to sit there, not drinking his drink. Other employees and a couple of managers ask if everything's okay. He says he's perfectly happy. Every now and then he takes a phone call, and at one point I swear I can see a guy on his phone at a different part of the store talking opposite of the guy at the table. Suddenly I start to feel like there are more eyes on me than I realize. I pull one of my managers to the back and tell him that I'm getting weirder and weirder feelings about that guy. The manager told me we'd keep an eye on him now. I was closing on this shift, so as we got closer and closer to closing time, I noticed him still sitting there. When the announcement that the store is closing in half an hour is made, he comes up to the counter and asks me if I could walk to my car with him. When I get off, I tell him our closing duties take us at least 45 minutes after we close. He tells me he'd be happy to wait. I politely decline, and he asked when I work next, so I tell him I'm off for the next couple of weeks. Well, then I should feel like I should walk you to your car. Especially if I might not be able to see you for a couple of weeks. I politely decline again, and eventually he does leave, finish my closing duties, and head to the employee area. As soon as I get there, I tell one of my managers about the situation and ask if I could take the side exit from the store. He agrees. He tells me he'd walk with me to my car to make sure I'm okay, if I'm cool with waiting a little while, and I am. So I walk out the side doors with a couple of managers and get into my car. And as I'm driving away, see a large van with extremely tinted windows parked right in front of the front door. There's no way to know for sure if my customer was in that van and if it was as ominous as I thought it was, but I know that I was not about to stay to figure it out. I took a long and winding path home that night, so to that very hot guy that I sold coffee to, let's not meet. I had a very odd experience that I really can't explain. It really gives me a real gang initiation or human trafficking vibes. And I'm left feeling uncomfortable, not like warning people or something. I've gone back to this location, but there's nothing to indicate anyone was ever there. So I'm a professional mushroom picker, and I've been an outdoorsman for over 30 years. I go to a lot of remote places at a lot of weird times, because rain doesn't care if it's day or night. I had plans to go out picking, so I went to bed super early, got up around 10 p.m. and started getting my gear together. I couldn't shake this feeling like I had a dream where I stopped at a rest stop and got attacked. But I don't remember having a dream like that. I remember just being uncomfortable, that someone was going to come out of nowhere when I pulled over to pee. I just couldn't shake the feeling of seeing the normal places I stopped at. But something bad happening while I was there. I pull over to pee driving all the time. I'm on the road a lot with a lot of coffee. So for something like that to just weird me out is very unusual. I'm also armed. So for it to me to bug me at this level was just unsettling and highly unusual. I'm also on the taller side in check, so human beings have never really been imposing in any sense. and past experience has taught me when I walk out of those kind of bad situations, I'm fine. So I literally have zero reason to have this kind of worry. Especially at the forefront of my mind, I'm driving 22 in Hyde Hebo, Oregon. Then it turns into 101, just south of Tillamook. I had already pulled over once, but got an unnerving feeling after about 10 seconds it just bailed, because it felt like people were outside. I didn't hear or see anyone. It was just kind of like a present feeling. So I told myself, you're fine. I won't stop at a pullout or wait for the rest stop. I couldn't wait anymore. I found the spot that cars don't seem to pull over at. Not in front of a house or any paths. There's zero excuse for any human being to be out there. It's perfect. There's no indication of other people using it either. Around me is a salt marsh slough-type habitat, wide open plain. No houses around, no mushroom picker paths, no garbage. Nobody had been behind me, and nobody came up in front of me. It was just me in the woods, and had been for some time. I pull over and think, well, okay, there's no way someone is just gonna pop out. I must be crazy or stressed. I'm freaking out over nothing. I reach over to grab my coffee and dig out a sandwich and decide to look up one last time after all. Nobody's been there every time I looked. Why do I still have this feeling nothing is going to be there? And then is a guy dressed like he just walked out the front door of a club in the pouring rain at midnight on a Tuesday. In the middle of basically a conservation level type ecosystem. I couldn't believe it. It was actually happening. Then the dream I remembered suddenly clicked, and things started to fall into place that made the situation and very, very badly. Almost like I was actively remembering it before it happened. The memories kind of flushed in a flood and sped up. Met up with how the present was going down. I saw how it ended. If I stayed, he didn't approach my car like he was approaching the passenger side as a concerned citizen or something. He walked into the middle of the road in front of my car. The place I need to drive to, his clothes weren't soaked and his pant legs didn't have mud from picking mushrooms. Sneakers, not boots, weren't even dirty. I don't even know how something like this is physically possible to achieve. I don't even think his clothes started getting wet from the pouring rain until I started observing him. I understand how all this sounds, so I've chosen my words carefully here. His left arm swayed as he walked, but his right arm stayed rigid. They kept his hip pointed away from me as he approached my car, just a slew of bright red lights indicating that he likely had a weapon. He wasn't looking at me or my car or my plate either. He was looking at some things, not just one thing about 10 to 15 feet behind me. He didn't increase or decrease his speed. He kept moving at the same pace with his arm extended at my car, staring at one thing behind me, and shifting his gaze to another thing behind me. I drove the car into drive as he's continuing to move at or in the way of the car, and I nearly run him over. This has no effect on him. He's not shocked. He doesn't jump out of the way about a half a mile up the road, and another car comes opposite direction, and their headlights wash over the area. He's there with his arm out staring where I just was like, I'd never drove in a way. He was still actively approaching me. The car gets closer, and I move further away and look back, and he's gone. I've been sober for over 3 years. Life has been unusually hard these past few weeks. Life was fine when this event happened. I'm not really entirely sure what to think of it. It's just so strange and unnerving, and having it happen after such a strange, complex feeling has made it almost feel supernatural in a sense. At minimum. I think I was about to get robbed and killed. The longer I reflect back on this experience, the more I wonder if this person was human or even existed at all, or if he did and some extrasensory perception saved my life. I'll try to be as brief as possible and stick to the relevant events that are going to give me this feeling. The latest events that happened last night. I didn't get much sleep. Apologies if I ramble. Or if I'm unclear, my wife and I recently purchased our first home after the birth of our daughter. Everything was as you would expect. The first few months painting, decorating, renovating, asking in our newfound slice of the American dream. You get the idea. Unusual things started happening several months ago. One day as I was getting home from work, I passed by a strange truck or two, 3 houses down from ours, and I say strange for a few reasons. We literally know everybody in our small neighborhood. I've never seen this trucker person before. There's no reason for through traffic to come down our street. The truck was driving very slowly, like put it in dry, but don't press the gas slowly. As I pulled in the driveway, the truck flipped the U-turn and came back toward my house. Getting out of my car, the truck crawled by. The driver stared daggers at me as he passed, then sped off. I don't like to judge based on appearances, and I like to think that I don't scare easily. Something about this guy's eyes just gave me a bad feeling. Obviously. This was weird. I mentioned what happened to my wife, telling her we should be more mindful about security. I told her about the type of truck my wife, then said a same truck drove by and the guy stared at me when I got home this afternoon. I thought he was just being creepy and checking me out. I tried to tease her a little bit to lighten the mood, following her cocky for assuming any guy driving by was checking her out. I didn't want to freak her out, but I myself was definitely freaked out. He saw that truck a few more times over the next couple of weeks, either driving by slowly or parked down the block and facing our yard, but one day a truck stopped driving by. We haven't seen it since. I sort of just dismissed the whole thing as me being paranoid. But then other things started happening the past month or so. My wife and I have been hearing tapping on the windows at the front of our house at night. It's happened 2 or 3 times to each of us separately, always around 10 or 11 p.m., sort of like this soft but distinct tap, tap, tap. It sounds like a knocking with a single knuckle on a metal part of the screen door, if that makes any sense. The first time that my wife and I hear the tapping together was last weekend. We were in the front room playing with our daughter around 9:30. Just about to settle her down for bed. Front room has a large, almost floor-to-ceiling window running the length of the wall next to the front door, which faces the street. You're all sitting on the floor with our backs to the window reading our daughter a book when we heard it. Tap, 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 tap. Now our house is older. Freaks and cracks are not uncommon, but this sound was so distinctively intentional that my wife and I immediately look at one another and bolted up out of the room. I had my wife and daughter lock themselves in a back room while I turned on all the lights and to sweep around the house. Of course, I didn't see anything. I was ready to dismiss the whole thing as, again, more paranoia over something that I probably had an innocent explanation for. That all was until last night around 9:45, we hear our daughter making noise in the baby monitor. I waited a few minutes to see if she would settle down, but when it became clear she wouldn't, I got up to put her back to sleep. Now the layout of the room is important to visualize this next part. This room is on the side of our house. The exterior wall shuts out a bit in an L shape, and the corner of this L is made up of windows. If you're standing in the door to the room, you're directly across from these windows. In one corner, there's a rocking chair, and the other corner pointed towards the front of the house. One window faces the street, the other faces our neighbor's house. A garden bed planted with small shrubs wraps around the house directly underneath it. I was sitting in the chair getting my daughter settled down, had a lamp on so the room was softly lit. Once she fell asleep, I stood up to put her in her crib. Something caught my eye. There's a figure standing a foot away from the window and the bare space between the shrubs and the house, and they were definitely staring at us. I didn't look long enough to see anything more of what appeared to be a man in a light gray hoodie is standing a few feet away on the other side of that glass. Sprinting from the room, I brought my daughter back to my wife and I's room, leaving her there while telling my understandably confused wife to lock the door after turning off all the lights inside the house and turning on all the lights outside on. I began moving from room to room, peering out the windows into the darkness. I couldn't see anything out of ordinary. Whoever it was must have taken off after seeing me notice them and made a quick exit. Obviously, I had some trouble sleeping after this, but hours checking security cameras and going from room to room. Now windows every single night, hoping but also not hoping that I would see anything that could explain what happened this morning. I went outside to the spot where that figure would have been standing. I thought, well, hoped there would be a plan or something that I mistook for the person. When I got to the spot, I realized the figure had been standing in exactly a bare patch of ground about 2 feet in diameter directly in front of our window. Part of me is still hoping that I'm being paranoid. The mind can play tricks on you in the dark, seeing things that aren't actually there, especially when you're a sleep-deprived new parent. But with everything that's been happening, I can't shake the feeling that there's actually someone out there last night watching us. Please let me be wrong. The following is a true story. as told by a now 58-year-old who wishes to remain anonymous. July 17, 1986, up ahead. The jagged timber obscures my path. I wait. I do a mental check. How far have I come? I estimate that I'm about 2 miles or so from the closest road comfortable alone. Time away from people is where my mind really finds its shine. I'm an introvert, a 23-year-old who was always anxious in crowds. I'm currently trespassing, but nobody wanders these grounds. I have next to nothing to worry about. But something is ahead. I feel it in my gut. I can make out a slight blue hue that shouldn't be there. A blanket? Maybe possibly something left behind by teenagers partying one summer night in the past. No way. Though not this far out, my grandfather used to warn me about moonshiners who still hid out in these parts. I always thought he was crazy, that he didn't realize that time passed him by. Maybe I'm wrong. Those kind of guys certainly wouldn't take kindly to trespassing young men with no reason to be there. I crouch down and I really wish I would have brought my binoculars. I cut my eyes and focus for a full minute or two. I felt a bit silly, but I was on edge. My mind forced me to check for any movement signs of anything that could put me in danger. I see none. I decided my curiosity is too much to bear. So I stand up tall, brush my pants, and move forward at a slower clip as I approach. It's clear that this isn't some blanket. It's a blue tarp one whose sheen gave way to the fact that it wasn't terribly old. Time had yet to mute its sleek look. The wear and tear hadn't completely set in yet. The area have been clear of brush, but I make out some sort of cabin crudely constructed. Maybe cabin is too strong a word, a large shelter of some kind. I move closer, but stop again. I listen this time, my mind begging me to be careful. I hear absolutely nothing unusual. Though no voices, no screens, no terrifying sound of some nightmarish monster. Just the sounds of Tennessee. The sounds that were supposed to be there. I've been out of work for over a year. I hike these areas to run away from my life problems when the sun is beating down, and I've covered a few miles. It seems I can relax. Forget about the world that I'm supposed to follow. But here I am standing close to what feels like something I shouldn't be a part of. My mind is doing everything it can to stop me from taking another step. It knows, my heart knows, it just simply doesn't feel right. I always choose the path of least resistance. It's what led me down this horrible path that I'm on. No, not this path in the woods that I'm walking. I meant the trajectory of my life and nobody. No outlook. No family of my own, and nobody who has nothing better to do than to trespass, lurking in the woods for days on end, searching for God knows what. Regardless of my reasons, I move around the structure and find myself staring at the entrance. The door is closed, and notice it hangs perfectly from its metal hinges. The shelter, as ragged as it looks, is well kept in the places that matter. The roof is covered in sheets of dark green metal that would do a perfect job of keeping the rain out. I scan. Nothing else stands out. No markings, no symbols, no campfires, no additional structures. Though this one is quite large. This thing has got to be every bit of 400 square feet, and all the shelters I've ever stumbled upon. It's by far the biggest. I manage. Hello, the word doesn't echo like I thought it would. The sound of my voice doesn't hang. It drops out to no response. There's no one here. I step to the door and feel my hand against the wood slats. I'm not sure why. Maybe subconsciously I was scared the heat from the devil's shelter waited for me on the other side. Of course, there was no heat. I felt nothing out of the ordinary. The door is wedged closed. Someone had jammed a piece of wood into the front slit like a shim to keep the door firmly shut. I managed to pull it free, but the door stayed in its closed position. I gave it a push and let the hinges do the rest of the work. I catch a strange smell, a mixture of mold and copper pennies. It's dark inside. There are no windows to bring in the light, so it's incredibly tough to see a few feet in. I make out a row of old car batteries neatly situated. I'm instantly confused. I pull up my backpack, unzip the front pocket, and locate my flashlight. I haven't moved past the doorway down on a single knee. I check over my shoulder just for good measure. Still alone, I aim the flashlight directly at the car batteries. They're new, and on top of them lies a hodgepodge of clean wires. They're holding what looks like the same red and black shine that they had when they were purchased. Remove the light beam further. In single chair sits in the middle of the room. The arms of the chair have been modified, wide armrests, some sort of loop sitting in their ends. The head of the chair contains some sort of metal device. It resembles a helmet, maybe, and brings to mind a memory of one of those chairs you see in a psych ward of a horror movie. Past the chair sitting on the table is a small TV. A nice one, I might add. Looked like one of those high-end RCAs that I've seen at the store before. Sitting next to the television is another box of some sort, some kind of electronic device I don't instantly recognize. I'm frozen here in the doorway. I hear my heart pound. A breathing is slightly elevated. Continue to scan the room on the west wall. The light from my flashlight picks up on an open cardboard box on the outside. A strip of old duct tape is firmly stuck to its side. Someone has written a few letters and numbers. CM pound 1A-5Z means nothing to me. Swing the flashlight back towards the car batteries again. Nothing else there. Finally, on the east wall, I make out 2 small camp beds. They're empty. No bedding or pillows, just sitting open. But I didn't get the impression that they've been used in a while. I'm at a complete loss. What on God's green earth have I stumbled upon? What is all of this? I decide not to venture inside. It's late now. Well past sunset, and it's getting dark very quickly. I close the door and jam the shim. I decide to retreat the same way that I came, about a half a mile. I'll set up camp for the night and return in the morning. July 18th, 1986. I spent the night struggling to sleep. My mind was playing out scenarios, and I couldn't shut off the valve. See, the land I'm on is owned by a well-known judge in the county. He's the type of guy who has political connections that probably reached top of the state. He's a known outdoorsman, like many in Tennessee, and spends a good deal of time in these woods hunting. It was about the only worry I had when choosing this location to poke around in. In the end, I figured it was too large an area for us to randomly come upon one another. What does strike me as strange, though, is the shelter has clearly been here for a while. There's no way this thing is going unnoticed. The judge has to know it's here. At some point, he would have come upon this thing, if it was built without his knowledge. I cleaned up my camping area the best I can and throw my pack over my shoulder, a few deep breaths, and I head back toward the shelter. My curiosity has me begging for answers. I'm hopeful that those lie ahead. I make my way back to the spot I was before, staring out at the shelter a bit in front of me and again looking for movement. I'm not as nervous this time around. Stay motionless for a couple of minutes. Nothing moving. I situate my pack and move back in at the shelter's door. I found myself removing the shim that I'd left last night. I use the door back open and again catch that strange smell of copper pennies. It's incredibly distinct. I put my pack down on my flashlight and shoot the beam into the dark room. Nothing is moved. I step inside. I first approach the batteries I saw the day before, not really sure what I was looking for, but nothing strange turns up upon closer inspection. I move to the east wall and inspect the cots. There's really nothing much to them. I shine my flashlight above and below them. I find nothing of interest. I remain convinced that these cots have not been slept in for some time. I can't explain exactly why I feel this way, but something about them gives me an impression that they haven't been used much. Just in front of those cots in the corner of the room, I find a single brown box with a cardboard cover that I hadn't seen before. I move closer in to inspect it. There's nothing on the outside to indicate what it is for. I kneel and pull off the lid, setting it aside. The box is full of file folders. They're tabs showing only handwritten letters and a number sequence, keeping the flashlight focused on the folders. I take my finger and flip through the tabs. Each yellowing folder is thin. Some of them seem empty. I stop on a random one and pull the file from the box. I open the folder and see a single white sheet of paper with a single letter and a single number printed on its front. I move the paper over, and behind I find a photograph. Single close-up someone's eye. I can see a partial cheek and a nose and what looks like a few strands of long blonde hair. You get the impression the eye belongs to a female. The eye itself has something wrong with it. The pupil is deformed, inky. Black center looks as if it's leaking into the girl's blue iris. The photograph is not dated, as no other markings. I pull a few other files and find similar photos in each file. There's one single piece of paper with one letter and one number behind that. A single close-up of a human eye, all of them deformed. Some of the pupils are not fully formed. Others show a pupil that seems to float somewhere random within the iris. I put the folders back careful to make sure the letters and numbers remain in sequence. I close the lid and push the box back into the corner. Stand up and turn towards the table sitting at the front of the room. My flashlight picks up the television. It's unplugged, but a second wire is running from an input on its backside to a device sitting near it on the table. I move over to the device and inspect it. I've seen something like this before. It's decent sized, encased in plastic. A door or clip hangs at its center, a few buttons to the right. A play button, rewind. This is a VCR. I've seen these things before in store catalogs, but this is the first time I've ever seen one in real life. I slide my hand over the top. There's no way someone would leave this out here to rot. These are 400 or more. I'm ashamed I briefly flirted with the idea of stealing it and selling it for cash. I press the power button, but nothing happens. The device is unplugged as well after a few minutes of admiring both the TV and the VCR. I turn around and my focus attention goes back to the chair in the middle of the room. It's a heavy metal steel. Maybe the armrests are definitely modified. They're extremely wide in the loops I saw the day before at the front of the armrests turn out to be adjustable. I do not touch them. There's a helmet with straps hanging over the headrest that looks like it can be adjusted. The chair is bolted to the floor. The smell of pennies is more pronounced here. Focus my beam on the bolts on the floor. The wood seems to be staying near those bolts. A dark, almost oily look has soaked into the boards by nothing else here. Of interest, finally, I make my way to the box on the west side of the room box that I saw yesterday. My flashlight picks out the same handwritten numbers and letters I'd previously seen. I realize it's a similar box to the one I found in the opposite corner step near it, and see that this one sits open inside a mess of plastic cases. I grab one, and it falls open. A videotape. Falls onto the floor. Sound startles me. My mind comes to life. I realize now that I've been inside the shelter for well over an hour. I swing around and look outside, half thinking I would see someone there at the doorway. There's no one, only the green canopy of the Tennessee limber. Up until now, I hadn't paid much attention to my surroundings, so caught up in investigating this room, I'd completely lost track of everything around me. I turned back towards the video cassette on the floor. My mind flashes with pictures of deformed pupils. I'm anxious, feeling out of sorts. I turn my attention to the batteries on the floor. My flashlight picking up the wires, the cobweb of cords, they look like snakes. Frozen in a massive quarrel, finally find a single cable leading all the way from the batteries and follow it right under the table with the TV and the VCR, sitting at the end of this single wire, a power strip. The copper penny smell engulfs my nostrils, feel nauseous, like I'm gonna be sick. I ran out of the shelter and vomited just outside the door. I quickly kicked dirt over the top, concerned that someone would notice that I've been there. Shaky, feel like my blood sugar is out of whack. Close the door and jam the shim, just as I've done before. Make my way to the edge of the timber and sit down near the base of a large tree. Rest my eyes. July 18th, 1986. Late afternoon. It's a muggy day. I can feel the beads of sweat roll down the sides of my face. I'm seeing flashes of light behind my eyelids, or like a storm of blue lightning in the darkness. My thoughts are swinging between warning me that I'm feeling weak and warning me that I've stumbled upon something evil. A smell of metal, of copper pennies, sits in my nostrils like a fog. I opened up my eyes to the late afternoon sun. The base of the tree is uncomfortable. I adjust. I drink the last of my water from my backpack, moving as little as possible. I close my eyes again. As I do, my thoughts take me to a moment in my past. I'm seated with my mother. Sunday morning, and we're attending service. My mother was a member of the Baptist church and always made sure that I was with her on Sunday mornings. I see the pastor, an older man in his 60s, standing at the pulpit. The preaching starts off fuzzy. My memory doesn't really give me the words, just the feeling of the room. Soon it comes into focus. See, if you believe in God as I do, then you are required to believe in the devil. If you believe in God as I do, then you are required to believe in the devil. See, if you believe in God as I do, then you are required to believe in the devil. See, if you believe in God as I do, then you are required to believe in the devil. See, if you believe in God as I do, then you are required to believe in the devil. See, if you believe in God as I do, then you are required to believe in the devil. See, if you believe in God as I do, then you are required to believe in the devil. See, if you believe in God as I do, then you are required to believe in the devil. See, if you believe in God as I do, then you are required to believe in the devil. See, if you believe in God as I do, then you are required to believe in the devil. See, if you believe in God as I do, then you are required to believe in the devil. See, if you believe in God as I do, then you are required to believe in the devil. See, if you believe in God as I do, then you are required to believe in the devil. See, if you believe in God as I do, then you are required to b The Bible is clear next. If you believe in heaven as I do, then you are required to believe in hell. The Bible is clear on this. These stories within this good book are real. You must remember, the evil exists. If it existed, then it still exists today. I open up my eyes, I sit for a moment longer, collect myself, grab my pack, and stand up. The judge who owns this land also owns a shelter, I'm sure of it. I'm only 2 miles from the closest road. There is absolutely no explanation for what I've stumbled upon. I've been inside the devil's shelter. I'm now at a crossroad. A battle begins inside my mind as to how to proceed. Do I hike back immediately and contact the sheriff, or do I go back? Do I venture inside and watch those video cassette tapes? Now, there's nothing positive to come from watching them, but I just can't help. But given to my deep curiosity, I head back to the shelter again. I stopped for a few moments to make sure. I see no movement. I see nothing. I make my way to the shelter door. I pull the shim and reacquaint myself with that smell of copper pennies, step back inside, and my rush out the door before I realize that I left the video cassette tape on the floor. I pick up both the cassette and its plastic case, and I make my way over to the table and set the case near the television. Still holding the tape, I kneeled my flashlight. I relocate the cable I saw earlier and follow it till it reached its power strip. There must be an inverter here somewhere. Otherwise, all this wiring is foolish. No reason to search for it. It really doesn't matter either. I plug these in and I have power, or I don't. Both plugs are inserted and I poke my head up just past the tabletop. A blue light flashes on the VCR. It's on. I'm shaky again this time. I slow down. I sit on the floor, facing the metal chair and the door. I tell myself to calm down. I attempt to control my breathing and my heart rate. It works after a few minutes. I stand up and turn back towards the TV. I reach out and turn on the RCA fiddle with a knob. I hear the sound of static as the screen blinks into view. I'm instantly unsettled. I can faintly hear the sounds of birds outside the door. Inside the TV's blue light illuminates my face. My flashlight hangs towards the floor. The sound of static among everything else is simply disturbing. Not sure why, I slid the tape into the VCR slot and hear the machine grab the reel. I press play. The screen goes black. The sound of static is replaced by what sounds like the ocean. It ebbs and flows. The screen flashes to white and back to black as the sound of the ocean continues. Finally, screen changes to a close-up shot of a man. He's staring at the camera. His eyes are blinking. The blinking is unnaturally fast, like the recording was sped up. A slight tone can now be heard. The blinking man disappears. The screen changes again, this time to a pattern of shapes, 2 tones now running simultaneously. The sounds seem pierce, somehow as if the first tone was cut to only make its way to my left ear. The second tone doing the same, only to my right. They then sync and switch ears. This pattern continues. I feel disoriented. I hit fast forward on the tape. I watch the screen as the patterns continue on. I hit play a few times and verify that the same tones continue, and the same patterns as I fast forward again until the patterns disappear, and the picture looks to show a blue screen. I hit play. A woman's voice enunciates, and it sounds slightly computerized. I rewind. I find the start of the blue screen and hit play again. The woman speaks. Her name is Crystal. You were born in 1979. Your mother abandoned you. You were saved. We saved you. We are your saviors. Your name is Crystal. You were born in 1979. Your mother abandoned you. You were saved. We saved you. We are your savior. This goes on until I end the tape and I hit eject. I grab another tape from the box and enter into the VCR. Same black screen, the same sounds of the ocean, the fast blinking man, and the same patterns and tones. I fast forward through the tape to another blue screen. Same woman's voice. Your name is Ashley. You were born in 1978. Your mother abandoned you. You were saved. We saved you. We are your savior. Your name is Ashley. You were born in 1978. Your mother abandoned you. You were saved. We saved you. We are your saviors. Multiple tapes continue on, with the same pattern, the same tones, the same man, the same computerized voice. The only change was the name and the year of birth. I put all the tapes back into the box, Make another sweep of the room, but there's nothing else here. I step outside, close the door, and jam the shim. None of this is right, nothing about this is normal. I put my backpack on and hike out of the timber at a fast pace. I make it back to the dirt road by nightfall, and I'm determined to call the sheriff. My lips are chapped and my body ached, but that doesn't stop me from jogging toward town. Not a single car passed me, and the night sky was clear as glass, and watched the stars flash like glitter and talk to God for the first time in years. I ask him for guidance. I ask him to explain to me what I just saw. I get no response after about an hour. I come upon the lights from town. I increase my pace. I find a payphone outside a gas station near the restrooms. On the side of the payphone was a sticker. With a list of emergency numbers at the bottom was a non-emergency number. Reasons unknown. I decided to call that one, as opposed to 911. A woman answers. I freeze. I hadn't even actually talked to another human being in over a week. I tell her that I would like to have an officer investigate a suspicious location. A dispatcher sounds a bit confused and asks where this location is. I give the location approximately. The woman asks if there's some sort of crime being committed, which I respond that I wasn't sure. I then proceed to explain what I'd seen as clearly skeptical, but promises to dispatch an officer, and we both hang up. The phone step away from the payphone, sit down on the curb. I'm exhausted. July 25th, 1986. I kick a rock from the dirt road as I stare into the timber. It's been a week since I called the authorities regarding that place. I have a 2-mile hike ahead. Easy stuff to compare to the type of sleep I've been getting these past few nights. I realized quickly that I had no way of knowing what the sheriff ended up finding. I make my way into the timber. I can tell my steps are a bit quicker than usual as my mind yearns for some sort of closure as I walk. I think through how depressing all of this really is. The shelter itself has a vibe of something that shouldn't be. It's depressing all on its own. The real sad part is that I realized that I had no one to tell this crazy story to. No family. No friends. No one I trusted. I was just dazed. I was sitting, stare at the wall as my mind would just run through the reality of what I just found. This judge, he knows. What does a man like that have to do with a shelter like this? And mind creates the avenues for my thoughts to flow through. I'm close to the shelter now. At least. I think I am not seeing the blue tarp. I can't make out the building, no green roof. I turn in a circle to make sure that I'm in the right place. I eventually find the tree that I rested against a few days back, definitely in the right area. But something is off. If the sheriff has been here, I see no sign of him. In fact, I don't see a sign of anything. I instantly get this strange feeling in my stomach. I move forward and find myself standing in the open space where the shelter used to stand. Shelter is gone. Where it used to be, I find brushes and branches and dirt stacked. I moved closer. I kick at the dirt. The brown quickly fades into a black residue. I kick at it some more and kneel down to get a closer look. Ash. I grab a stick and dig dark black ashes. They burned it to the ground. I stand up. I'm afraid. Now I feel like I've walked into a trap, a feeling like I wasn't alone. I retreat to the base of my familiar tree stop and look back. No movement at all. They burned that shelter down to ashes and then buried it under the brush. I'm asking myself every question in the book. I called the authorities to report this place, and a week later it's destroyed and hidden. Doesn't make any sense. Powerless. I have nothing to prove my story. Nobody that would trust me if I told them. I called a sheriff who I assumed called the judge. That judge burned down the devil's shelter, and now I'm a young man trespassing with the story I have no way of proving. I slide down against the base of the tree, a mind full of equations with no answers, that knew the tree for a while, listening to the sounds of the woods, questioning everything. I should have grabbed one of those cassette tapes or one of those file folders. My efforts to conceal my poking around completely destroyed any chance of anyone ever believing me. March 2nd, 1987. I listened to the dial tone buzz for a long while before I dialed their number. After 2 rings, a woman answers. I explain myself, tell the young woman on the phone that I'm following up on a call that I made to the sheriff's office a few months ago after advising the woman that I was never given a case number, and then giving the address of the judge's home. The woman advises me that they have no records on file. I hang up the phone. October 17th, 1990. I'm a depressed mess. These last 3 years have been nothing but odd jobs, apartment rentals and cheap used cars and late-night television. I think of that shelter often. It haunts my nights and runs my brain rabbit. I'm seated on an old couch, it's late, the television flashes scenes from an television episode of In the Heat of the Night. I've debated on going to the FBI. I already know they'll think I'm crazy. I'm sure they'll have information on me. They'll see a 27-year-old unemployed hippie. I already know it's a complete wasted time for me. It's the only answer to at least attempt to ease my conscience fall asleep. November 2nd, 1990. There's a knock at the door. Finally been waiting for a while, and I'm a nervous wreck. I open up the door. A young agent greets me from my front patio and I welcome him inside. He's slim, is probably close to my age. I'm sure he's already judging me and my cheap rental. I direct him to my kitchen table, and he takes a seat. He declines a cup of coffee. I pour one for myself and sit opposite him. He's no nonsense. We spend almost no time on small talk. He pulls a form from his briefcase and has a pen at the ready for the next hour. I explain in detail the shelter that I stumbled upon and the judge's land 4 years prior. The agent is professional. He seems to be keeping notes and asked a few questions along the way. After I'm done, I look him dead in the face and tell him, I'm not crazy. I apologize for not calling earlier and told him I was afraid to do so because I was trespassing. Finally, I tell him this whole thing has really bothered me, has completely impacted my entire life. He offers no sympathy. He thanks you for reaching out, shakes my hand and gives me his card. He tells me I did the right thing in contacting the FBI, and that they take all reports very seriously as he exits. He tells me he'll be in touch. I never hear from him again. June 21st, 2001, on the second ring of the doorbell, I opened up my door. There standing on the porch is a well-dressed man in a gray suit and dark tie. He asked for me by name. I respond to him that I'm the one he's asking for. He introduces himself and proceeds to explain that he's a private investigator and wanted to ask me a few questions before I answer, a bit confused. I ask if everything is okay, if I'm in some sort of trouble. The PI explained that he's investigating a missing person case from Colorado, and then he came across a report that I gave to the FBI in 1990. I let him inside. He hands me an FBI report. What can you tell me about this judge in your report? Nothing. I definitely didn't know the guy personally, I just knew of him. He was well known in the county at the time, just happened to be trespassing on his acreage when I came upon the shelter described in my report. Why are you investigating him? Not exactly been hired to investigate a missing person case from Colorado. She was last seen in a small town outside of Boulder in 1981. Her family hasn't been able to make any headway. Terrible. But I'm sorry, how does this connect to the judge in Tennessee? Well, I was able to locate one of the missing girl's best friends from back then. She was in rough shape, an addict. I talked to her length regarding the disappearance, and she ends up telling me that this missing girl had been running around with some group from the East Coast. The best I could gather was that they were some sort of cult of some kind. She didn't have much for details, but she did give me the name of some guy in Tennessee. I visited him a month ago. The judge, no. And it ended up being a dead end. This guy was stationed in Germany from 1979 to 1983. He claims to have no idea who this missing girl is, but in our interview, when I told him the cult angle, something about the story struck a chord. He told me that he used to know a guy, a judge, who claimed that he was some sort of connected man. He always thought the guy was slightly crazy, but what's strange is this guy was also connected to some kind of cult. The real coincidence was his travel. He made frequent trips from Tennessee to Boulder area to meet up with some of these other cult members. Honestly, I have no idea how the puzzle piece even came to be. I'm still scratching my head over it. And the guy traveling between Tennessee and Boulder is the judge, right? Yes. The man who was making those trips is the same judge in your report. Imagine my surprise when I came across your report and see all of those things about the supposed shelter on his land. The judge passed away 2 years back. Really, this is all we've got. I've spent weeks interviewing people who knew this judge, not a single one of them had a bad thing to say about the guy. He's clean as a whistle. My mind strays. Pi sticks around for another 15 minutes or so. There wasn't much else to gain from our conversation. I walked into the door and watched as he hopped into his SUV. It was the last time that I ever talked to anyone about the Devil's Shelter.